The digital clock on the bomb's display read 0:03 when Vanessa's steady hands made the final cut. 3 seconds. That's how close downtown Phoenix came to becoming a crater. But that moment of triumph was still hours away from the morning that started like any other Tuesday in her seemingly ordinary life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Vanessa Martinez pulled into the parking lot of Henderson Technical College at exactly 7:15 a.m., the same time she'd arrived every weekday for the past 4 years. Her beat-up Honda Civic looked out of place among the newer cars belonging to the engineering faculty, but Vanessa had never cared much about appearances. She grabbed her worn leather messenger bag from the passenger seat and headed toward the electronics lab, where she taught basic circuit design to first-year students. At 28, Vanessa was the youngest instructor in the engineering department, a fact that her colleagues never let her forget. Dr. William Hendricks, the department head, had made it clear during her hiring interview that her position was temporary and experimental. The administration had reluctantly created the role after receiving federal grants, specifically targeted at increasing technical education accessibility, but most of the faculty viewed her as an affirmative action hire rather than a qualified instructor. "Morning, Martinez," called out Professor James Patterson as she passed his office. The condescension in his voice was barely concealed behind false politeness. "Ready for another day of teaching hobby electronics to the community?" "College crowd?" Vanessa forced a smile. "Always ready, Professor Patterson." She didn't mention that several of her hobby electronics students had gone on to secure positions with major tech companies, while his advanced theoretical courses had a 60% dropout rate. The truth was, Vanessa's background was far more complex than anyone at Henderson Tech realized. She graduated magna cum laude from MIT with dual degrees in electrical engineering and computer science, followed by a master's degree in explosive ordnance disposal from the Naval Postgraduate School. Her thesis on improvised explosive device detection and neutralization had earned her recognition from the Department of Defense, but that life felt like a different universe now. After her military service ended, Vanessa had deliberately chosen the quiet anonymity of community college instruction. She'd seen enough violence, enough destruction, enough of what happened when brilliant minds turned their knowledge toward creating chaos rather than building something better. Teaching circuit design to young students who were genuinely excited about learning felt like penance for the darker applications of her expertise. Her first class of the day was Introduction to Electronics, a course populated mainly by students who couldn't afford 4-year universities but possessed the kind of natural curiosity that reminded Vanessa why she'd fallen in love with engineering in the first place. As she set up the morning's demonstration on basic transistor circuits, she noticed that Maria Santos, one of her most promising students, looked troubled. "Everything all right, Maria?" Vanessa asked as students filed into the lab. "My cousin Diego didn't come home last night," Maria said quietly. "He works security at the Westgate Financial Center downtown. His supervisor said he finished his shift and left the building, but ... She shrugged helplessly. "It's not like him to disappear." Vanessa felt a familiar chill, the kind of intuitive warning that had served her well during her military years. "Have you contacted the police? They said we have to wait 24 hours before filing a missing person report. Something about adults having the right to disappear if they want to." Maria's voice carried frustration mixed with genuine worry. "But Diego wouldn't just vanish. He's been saving money to bring his girlfriend over from El Salvador. He had everything planned out." The morning progressed normally, with Vanessa guiding her students through the intricacies of transistor behavior and basic amplification circuits. But Maria's concern about her cousin nagged at her consciousness. During her lunch break, Vanessa found herself researching the Westgate Financial Center online. though she couldn't explain why the 40-story building housed several major banks, investment firms, and government contract offices. It was exactly the kind of high-value target that had featured prominently in her military intelligence briefings. More concerning was the building's significance to the regional economy. A successful attack on Westgate could destabilize financial markets across the southwest. Vanessa closed her laptop and shook her head. She was being paranoid, letting her military training create threats where none existed. Diego Santos was probably fine. People had personal crises, family emergencies, relationship problems. His disappearance was most likely mundane rather than sinister. Her afternoon classes proceeded without incident until Detective Ray Morrison appeared in her classroom doorway at 3:45 p.m. Vanessa recognized the type immediately. Career law enforcement. Probably 20 years on the force, with the weary competence of someone who'd seen every variation of human stupidity and malice. Ms. Martinez? I'm Detective Morrison, Phoenix PD. I need to speak with you about one of your students. Vanessa dismissed her class early and gestured for Morrison to take a seat at one of the lab benches. This is about Maria Santos, isn't it? You know about her cousin? Morrison's eyebrows rose slightly. That's interesting. She mentioned he was missing this morning. Why is that interesting? Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed her a photograph. Diego Santos was found dead in his apartment this morning. Single gunshot wound to the head, execution style. Professional. Work. The familiar cold focus that Vanessa associated with dangerous situations settled over her mind. Why are you here talking to me instead of investigating his murder? Because Diego Santos wasn't just a security guard, Morrison replied. He was an informant for a joint FBI-ATF task force investigating suspected terrorist financing operations in Phoenix. And according to his handler, he'd reported suspicious activity at the Westgate Financial Center 3 days ago. Vanessa kept her expression neutral, but her mind was racing. What kind of suspicious activity? Unusual access patterns to restricted areas of the building. People conducting surveys of the building's structural supports. Questions about the building's evacuation procedures and emergency services response times. Morrison studied her carefully. The kind of reconnaissance that suggests someone was planning something big. Detective, I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Morrison leaned forward. Because Diego Santos specifically mentioned your name in his final report. He said his cousin Maria had been talking about her electronics instructor, someone with an unusual background who might be able to help analyze some technical equipment he'd photographed. Vanessa felt the walls of her carefully constructed civilian life beginning to crumble. I teach basic circuit design to community college students. I'm not sure what kind of technical analysis you think I'm qualified to provide. Ms. Martinez, I've done my homework. Morrison's voice carried the weight of someone who was done playing games. Vanessa Elena Martinez, MIT graduate, former U.S. Navy EAD specialist, recipient of the Bronze Star for actions during Operation Enduring Freedom. Your military records are mostly classified, but what I can access suggests you were involved in some very sophisticated counter-terrorism operations. The classroom suddenly felt smaller, more confined. Vanessa had spent 4 years building a quiet life away from the world Morrison was describing. That was a long time ago, Detective. Not that long. And according to my contacts at the FBI, the kind of expertise you developed doesn't just disappear. Morrison showed her another photograph on his tablet. This is what Diego Santos photographed 3 days before he was killed. The image showed what appeared to be a standard electrical junction box, the kind found in every large commercial building. But Vanessa's trained eye immediately identified details that would be invisible to most observers. The wiring patterns were wrong for standard electrical systems. The components included elements that had no business being in a routine power distribution setup. Most concerning was a small device attached to the side of the junction box, something that looked like a timer mechanism coupled with what appeared to be a wireless receiver. Where in the building was this taken? Vanessa asked, though she was already analyzing the technical implications of what she was seeing. Sublevel 2, near the building's main electrical distribution systems. Morrison was watching her reaction carefully. The FBI's technical team looked at the photo but couldn't identify anything obviously suspicious. They said it looked like standard building infrastructure. Vanessa studied the image more carefully, her mind automatically cataloging the components and their possible functions. The device attached to the junction box was definitely not standard infrastructure. The wiring modifications suggested someone had been preparing to override the building's electrical systems. Combined with the timer and wireless receiver, the setup looked like preparation for a coordinated attack. Detective, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Vanessa looked up from the tablet. How much do you know about the current threat level for potential terrorist attacks in Phoenix? Morrison's expression grew serious. More than I'd like to. We've had increased federal presence in the city for the past 6 months. Homeland Security has been tracking suspected cells with connections to international terrorist organizations. There's been chatter about a significant operation targeting financial infrastructure in the Southwest. And now you have a dead informant who was investigating suspicious activity at one of the region's most important financial centers. Vanessa felt pieces clicking into place in her mind, the same analytical process that had made her effective at identifying and neutralizing explosive threats during her military service. That's why I'm here, Morrison said. The FBI is treating this as a murder investigation, but they're not taking the terrorist angle seriously. They think Diego stumbled onto a corporate security issue or maybe some kind of white-collar crime operation. Vanessa looked at the photograph again, this time focusing on details she'd initially overlooked. The timer mechanism wasn't just a simple countdown device. It appeared to be synchronized with multiple other systems, suggesting a coordinated event involving several different elements. The wireless receiver was military-grade equipment, far more sophisticated than anything a corporate security team would use. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Detective Morrison, I think the FBI is making a serious mistake. Vanessa's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent years analyzing similar threats. This isn't corporate espionage or white-collar crime. Someone is preparing to conduct a major attack on the Westgate Financial Center, and they killed Diego Santos because he discovered their operation. Morrison was already reaching for his radio. What kind of attack? Based on what I'm seeing in this photograph, they're planning to disable the building's electrical systems and emergency communications as part of a larger operation. The timer suggests they want to coordinate the electrical disruption with something else, probably something that requires the building to be isolated from outside assistance. Like what? Vanessa met his eyes, seeing her own grim realization reflected in his expression. Like a bomb. The radio crackled to life in Morrison's hand before he could respond. All units, we have reports of a suspicious package in the lobby of the Westgate Financial Center. Building security is initiating evacuation procedures. A bomb squad is en route. Morrison stared at Vanessa with a mixture of shock and growing respect. How did you know? Because this is what I used to do, Vanessa replied, already reaching for her jacket. And detective, if I'm right about what we're dealing with, your bomb squad is going to need help. The drive to downtown Phoenix took 18 minutes with Detective Morrison's police cruiser cutting through afternoon traffic using lights and sirens. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, her mind running through everything she knew about building-based explosive threats and the technical requirements for the kind of coordinated attack that Diego Santos had apparently uncovered. The Westgate Financial Center rose 40 stories into the clear Arizona sky, its glass and steel facade reflecting the late afternoon sun. Under normal circumstances, it was an impressive example of modern architecture. Today, it looked like a target. Emergency vehicles surrounded the building's perimeter, creating a controlled chaos of flashing lights and radio chatter. Police were directing evacuees away from the structure, while fire department units established a staging area for potential rescue operations. In the center of it all, Vanessa could see the distinctive bulk of a bomb disposal robot being prepared. For deployment, Martinez over here, Morrison called out, leading her toward a command vehicle where several officials in suits were engaged in intense discussion. Agent Rebecca Chen, the FBI's on-scene commander, looked up as they approached. She was younger than Vanessa had expected, probably in her mid-30s, with the kind of focused intensity that suggested significant experience in crisis management. "Detective Morrison, what's the status of your murder investigation?" Chun asked without preamble. "Agent Chun, I'd like you to meet Vanessa Martinez. She's the technical expert Diego Santos mentioned in his final report." Chun's expression shifted to polite skepticism as she evaluated Vanessa's civilian clothes and community college instructor appearance. "Ms. Martinez, I appreciate your willingness to help, but we have federal bomb technicians en route. This is probably beyond the scope of civilian technical support." "Agent Chun," Vanessa said calmly, "what can you tell me about the suspicious package in the lobby?" "Standard briefcase-sized device, left near the main elevator bank. Building security noticed it about an hour ago when the owner didn't return to claim it. X-ray analysis suggests electronic components and what appears to be plastic explosives." Vanessa nodded. "What about the building's electrical systems? Have you checked for signs of tampering?" Chun frowned. "Why would we check the electrical systems?" Morrison showed Chun the photograph from Diego Santos' final report. Ms. Martinez identified this as evidence of preparation for a coordinated attack. She believes the suspicious package might be a diversion. Agent Chun studied the photograph, but Vanessa could see that the technical details weren't registering as significant. "This looks like standard building infrastructure to me." "Agent Chun, with respect, it's not." Vanessa pointed to specific elements in the image. "That timer mechanism is connected to the building's main electrical distribution system. Someone has installed remote override capabilities that would allow them to cut power to the entire structure on command. The wireless receiver suggests they're planning to coordinate the power outage with other elements of their attack." "Other elements? Like what?" "Like using the bomb in the lobby to force evacuation procedures, while the real threat is elsewhere in the building." Vanessa felt the familiar clarity that came with analyzing a complex tactical situation. Think about it from an operational perspective. Why would terrorists want to blow up a lobby? Maximum casualties would require targeting areas where people can't evacuate quickly. Chun was beginning to look troubled. "You're suggesting the lobby device is a distraction?" "I'm suggesting that professional terrorists don't announce their presence with obvious bombs in public spaces unless they want authorities to focus on the wrong location." Vanessa gestured toward the Westgate building. "While everyone is concentrating on the lobby device, they're probably positioning their real weapon somewhere that will cause maximum structural damage and prevent effective evacuation." Morrison was already on his radio, requesting additional units to search the building's sublevel areas. Agent Chun was making notes, her skeptical expression gradually giving way to professional concern. "Ms. Martinez," Chun said, "assuming you're correct about this being a coordinated attack, what would be the most likely target location for a primary device?" Vanessa studied the building's profile, automatically calculating structural vulnerabilities and likely blast patterns. Building support columns in the parking garage sublevels. A properly placed explosive device could bring down a significant portion of the structure. Combined with disabled electrical systems preventing elevator operation and emergency communications, you'd have a catastrophic casualty event. Agent Chun was already coordinating with the bomb squad commander over her. Radio. This is Agent Chun. Expand the search to include all sublevel areas, focusing on structural support elements. We may be dealing with multiple devices. The response came back within minutes. Agent Chun, we found something. Sublevel 3, parking garage. Large device attached to a main support column. This one's much bigger than the lobby package. Vanessa felt a familiar combination of vindication and dread. She'd been right about the coordination, but that meant they were now dealing with a much more dangerous situation than anyone had initially realized. Agent Chun, she said quietly, I think you're going to need that civilian technical support after all. The bomb disposal robot's camera feed displayed on multiple screens throughout the command vehicle, showing a device that made Vanessa's blood run cold. Attached to the concrete support column in sublevel 3 was approximately 40 pounds of military-grade plastic explosive, enough to compromise the structural integrity of the entire building's eastern wing. But what concerned her most wasn't the explosive itself. It was the sophisticated electronic package controlling it. Your robot's camera resolution isn't high enough to analyze the detonation system properly, Vanessa told Agent Chun, studying the grainy feed. That's not a simple timer or remote trigger. The electronics package looks like it includes multiple backup detonation methods, possibly including anti-tampering devices. Commander Patricia Walsh of the Phoenix PD Bomb Squad looked up from her control station. Ma'am, with all due respect, we've been doing this for 15 years. Our standard protocol is to use the robot to place a disruptor charge and neutralize the device remotely. Vanessa recognized the defensive tone immediately. She'd encountered it countless times during her military service when local authorities resented outside expertise. Commander Walsh, what's your experience with internationally sourced explosive devices? We deal with domestic threats primarily. Gang-related devices, disgruntled employees, domestic terrorism incidents. Walsh's voice carried professional confidence, but Vanessa detected an underlying uncertainty. Most of our calls involve pipe bombs or vehicle-based explosives. This isn't a domestic threat, Vanessa said, pointing to specific details visible on the robot's feed. The plastic explosive appears to be Semtex, probably Czech or Slovak military grade. The electronic package includes components I recognize from international terrorist operations. Your standard disruptor approach could trigger backup detonation. Systems. Agent Chun intervened before the tension could escalate further. What are you recommending, Ms. Martinez? I need to see the device in person. Robot cameras can't provide the detail necessary to analyze sophisticated anti-tampering systems. Someone needs to conduct a close-range assessment before any neutralization attempts. Commander Walsh's expression shifted from defensive to alarmed. Absolutely not. We don't send civilians into explosive disposal situations. That's what the robot is for. Commander, I'm not a civilian when it comes to explosive ordnance disposal. Vanessa's voice carried quiet authority. I spent 3 years defusing IEDs in Afghanistan and Iraq, including devices exactly like this one. Your robot is excellent for standard domestic threats, but it's not equipped for the kind of sophisticated analysis this situation requires. Detective Morrison had been listening to the exchange while coordinating with other law enforcement agencies. Agent Chun, what's the current casualty estimate if that device detonates? Preliminary structural analysis suggests the eastern wing would collapse, possibly triggering a progressive failure that brings down adjacent sections. Chun consulted her tablet. Conservative estimate is 800 immediate casualties, with potentially thousands more from secondary effects. The weight of those numbers settled over the command vehicle like a physical presence. Vanessa found herself thinking about her students at Henderson Technical College. Young people with their whole lives ahead of them, dreams and plans that would never come to fruition if this operation failed. There's another factor we need to consider, Vanessa said, studying the building's architectural plans displayed on one of the command screens. The Westgate Financial Center houses federal banking regulators and several government contractor offices on floors 30 through 35. If the attack succeeds, the economic disruption could destabilize financial markets across multiple states. Agent Chen was already on her phone, apparently updating federal authorities about the expanded scope of the threat. Commander Walsh was conducting her own consultation with bomb squad technicians, their voices low but urgent. "Martinez," Detective Morrison said quietly, "what aren't you telling us about your background?" Vanessa hesitated. The full details of her military service were classified, but the current situation seemed to demand honesty about her qualifications. "I wasn't just an EOD specialist. I was part of a joint task force that specialized in analyzing and neutralizing sophisticated explosive devices designed by international terrorist organizations. The electronics package on that device matches patterns I've seen before." "What kind of patterns?" "The kind designed by people who know that Western bomb disposal teams rely heavily on robotic systems and remote disruption techniques." Vanessa pointed to the command vehicle's communication equipment. "Those backup detonation systems probably include seismic triggers that activate if the device detects the vibrations from a disruptor charge. They're specifically designed to defeat standard American bomb disposal protocols." Commander Walsh rejoined their conversation, her expression grim. "My team leader concurs that the device appears more sophisticated than our typical domestic threats. But sending a civilian into the building violates every safety protocol we have. Then what do you recommend?" Agent Chun asked. "We evacuate a wider perimeter and attempt remote neutralization using standard procedures. If it triggers, we minimize casualties by ensuring adequate clearance distance." Vanessa felt a surge of frustration. "Commander, that's not a neutralization plan. That's a controlled demolition plan. You're accepting the destruction of the building and the potential death of anyone who couldn't evacuate in time." "It's the safest approach for emergency personnel," Walsh replied defensively. "What about the people still trapped in elevators because the electrical systems have been compromised? What about anyone with mobility limitations who couldn't evacuate quickly? What about first responders who'll be injured in the collapse?" Vanessa's voice carried the passion of someone who'd spent years risking her life to prevent exactly these kinds of casualties. Agent Chun was studying building evacuation reports on her tablet. Current estimates suggest approximately 200 people may still be in the building. Elevator failures have trapped several groups between floors, and we have confirmed reports of injured individuals who couldn't complete evacuation procedures. The mathematical reality was stark. 200 certain casualties versus the risk of losing one person attempting a sophisticated disarming procedure. For Vanessa, it wasn't a difficult calculation. "Agent Chun, I can analyze that device and determine the safest neutralization approach. But I need authorization to enter the building and access to proper EOD equipment. Ms. Martinez, you're not a federal employee. I can't authorize a civilian to conduct explosive disposal operations." Chun's voice carried genuine regret. "The liability issues alone would be insurmountable." "Then make me a federal employee." Vanessa surprised herself with the directness of her response. "Emergency deputization, consulting contractor status, whatever bureaucratic mechanism allows. Me to do what needs to be done." Commander Walsh was shaking her head. "This is insane. You haven't worked EOD in 4 years. You're not familiar with current equipment or protocols. You could get yourself killed and make the situation worse." "Commander, explosive devices haven't fundamentally changed in 4 years. The physics of detonation are the same, the electronic principles are the same, and the analytical methodology is the same," Vanessa met her eyes. What's different is that I've had 4 years to study international terrorist tactics from an academic perspective. I understand how these systems work better now than I did during my active service. Detective Morrison had been monitoring police radio traffic during their discussion. "We've got another problem," he announced. "Airport security just detained 3 individuals attempting to board a flight to Mexico. They were carrying false identification and large amounts of cash. TSA found traces of explosive residue on their luggage." Agent Chun looked up sharply. "Are they connected to this operation?" "Phoenix PD is bringing them in for questioning, but if they're part of the terrorist cell, it suggests this attack was planned as a suicide operation. The perpetrators expected to be leaving the country immediately after the device detonated." Vanessa felt pieces of the operational picture clicking into place. "Which means they're not planning to be in the area when the device goes off. They've probably set it for a specific time rather than waiting to trigger it remotely." "How does that change our situation?" Chun asked. "It means we have a deadline whether we want one or not. If this is a timed device, we need to find out when it's set to detonate and work backward from there." Commander Walsh was consulting with her technicians again, their conversation punctuated by urgent gestures toward the robot control station. When she returned, her expression had changed from defensive to genuinely concerned. "Ms. Martinez, my electronics specialist, reviewed the robot footage more carefully. He identified what appears to be a countdown display on the device, but our camera resolution isn't sufficient to read the actual time remaining." "How close would someone need to get to read the display clearly?" "Within 10 feet, probably closer." The command vehicle fell silent except for the constant chatter of radio communications from various emergency agencies. Everyone understood the implications. Reading the countdown display would require human presence in immediate proximity to enough explosive to level a city block. "There's something else," Walsh continued reluctantly. "My specialist thinks the anti-tampering systems may be more sophisticated than we initially assessed. The device appears to have multiple independent detonation triggers, possibly including motion sensors and proximity detectors." "Which means," Agent Chun prompted, "which means that even sending the robot too close could trigger an immediate detonation." Vanessa absorbed this information with the analytical detachment she'd learned during her military service. The situation was becoming more complex, but complexity wasn't necessarily impossible to manage. It just required more sophisticated planning and greater precision in execution. "Agent Chun, I need to ask you a direct question, and I need you to give me an honest answer." Vanessa looked directly at the FBI commander. "Based on everything we know right now, what do you think the probability of success is using standard bomb disposal protocols?" Shen consulted her tablet, apparently reviewing technical assessments from various federal agencies. "Honestly, maybe 30% chance of successful neutralization without detonation. 70% chance we trigger the device and lose the building. And if someone with specialized experience in international terrorist explosive devices conducts a manual analysis and neutralization." Chun was quiet for a long moment. "I don't have enough data to make that assessment." "I do," Vanessa said quietly. 60 to 70% chance of successful neutralization, assuming the device follows patterns I've encountered before. Higher if I can identify the specific terrorist organization that designed it." Commander Walsh was looking between Vanessa and Agent Chun with growing comprehension. "You're seriously considering letting a community college instructor attempt to disarm a 40-pound terrorist bomb?" "I'm considering whether the alternative is acceptable," Chun replied. "Commander, what's your assessment of evacuation completeness?" "We've cleared the building as much as possible, but we have confirmed locations where people are trapped or unable to evacuate. Elevators are non-functional due to the electrical system tampering. Several individuals with mobility limitations are stranded on upper floors." Agent Chun was making notes, apparently calculating casualty estimates for various scenarios. Ms. Martinez, if we provided you with proper equipment and authorization, how would you approach this situation? First, I need to see the device in person and determine the exact nature of the anti-tampering systems. Second, I need to identify the countdown timeline so we know how much time we have for neutralization. Third, I need to analyze the backup detonation triggers and determine the safest sequence for disabling them. And if you determine the device can't be safely neutralized? Vanessa had been expecting that question. Then I evacuate and we accept the building loss. But I won't make that determination based on robot camera footage. I need direct visual analysis. Detective Morrison had been monitoring the broader law enforcement response throughout their discussion. Agent Chun, decision. Time. The Phoenix Fire Department is requesting permission to begin emergency evacuation procedures for the trapped individuals. That operation will put dozens of first responders inside the building while the device is still active. The weight of command responsibility was visible on Chun's face. She was being forced to choose between multiple unacceptable options, the kind of decision that defined careers and haunted people for the rest of their lives. Ms. Martinez, I need you to understand something before I make this decision. Chun's voice carried the gravity of someone about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. If I authorize this operation and something goes wrong, it won't just be your life at risk. Failed neutralization attempts can sometimes trigger immediate detonation rather than allowing time for evacuation. I understand the stakes, Vanessa replied. I also understand that doing nothing guarantees those 200 people die when the timer reaches 0. Agent Chun looked at Commander Walsh, then at Detective Morrison, then back at Vanessa. What equipment do you need? Standard EOD kit, including electronic analysis tools and manual disarmament implements. Radio communication with the command post. And someone needs to contact my former commanding officer at Naval Special Warfare Group 2. If this device was built by a known terrorist organization, he may have intelligence that could help identify specific disarmament procedures. Commander. Walsh was already coordinating with her equipment technicians. Ms. Martinez, I want you to understand that if you trigger that device, you won't have time to regret the decision. Commander, if I don't try to neutralize that device, 200 people won't have time to regret my failure. As Vanessa prepared to enter the Westgate Financial Center, she found herself thinking about the strange path that had brought her to this moment. 4 years ago, she'd walked away from EOD work because she was tired of the constant proximity to death and destruction. She'd chosen the quiet life of a community college instructor because she wanted to build things rather than prevent their destruction. Now, faced with the most sophisticated explosive threat she'd ever encountered, Vanessa realized that some responsibilities couldn't be walked away from. Some skills came with obligations that transcended personal preferences or career choices. The 40 pounds of military-grade explosive waiting in Sublevel 3 represented more than just a terrorist attack. It represented a test of everything she'd learned, everything she'd trained for, and everything she believed about the value of human life. As she checked the EOD equipment that Commander Walsh's team had assembled, Vanessa felt the familiar combination of fear and focused determination that had carried her through 3 years of combat deployments. The fear kept her alert and careful. The determination would get the job done. Agent Chen appeared beside her as she finished equipment checks. Ms. Martinez, we've contacted your former commanding officer. He's standing by for consultation if you need tactical advice. Thank you. What about the countdown timeline? Unknown. That's your first priority once you reach the device. Vanessa nodded and clipped the radio communicator to her vest. As she prepared to enter the building that might become her tomb, she thought about Maria Santos, grieving for a cousin who died trying to prevent this attack. She thought about her students at Henderson Technical College, Young people who deserve the chance to build better futures. Most of all, she thought about the 200 people trapped inside the Westgate Financial Center, counting on someone. They'd never met to save their lives. Vanessa had spent 4 years trying to escape the responsibility that came with her specialized knowledge. Today, that responsibility had found her anyway. The emergency lighting in sublevel 3 cast eerie shadows across the parking garage, transforming familiar spaces into an alien landscape of concrete pillars and abandoned vehicles. Vanessa moved carefully through the maze of parked cars, her footsteps echoing in the unnatural silence. The building's forced evacuation had left behind a tomb-like atmosphere, broken only by the distant hum of backup generators and the occasional creak of structural settling. "Command, this is Martinez. I'm approaching the target area now." Vanessa spoke quietly into her radio headset, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. "Copy, Martinez. Robot is maintaining position at 50 meters. What's your visual assessment?" Vanessa rounded the final concrete pillar and stopped. The bomb was larger than the robot's camera had suggested. A sophisticated assembly of military-grade explosive blocks, arranged around the building's primary support column with mathematical precision. But what made her breath catch wasn't the explosive itself, it was the electronic control system. "Command, I need to revise our threat assessment. This device is significantly more advanced than anything I encountered during active service." The countdown display glowed red against the gray concrete. 1 hour 47 minutes and 23 seconds. 1 hour, 47 minutes, 23 seconds. But surrounding the timer were multiple additional displays showing system status indicators, backup trigger conditions, and what appeared to be real-time monitoring of various building systems. "Martinez, what are you seeing?" "The device isn't just a bomb, it's an integrated building attack system. The explosives are connected to monitoring equipment that's tracking elevator positions, emergency lighting status, and communication system functionality." Vanessa moved closer, staying alert for motion sensors or proximity triggers. Whoever built this wanted to ensure maximum casualties by coordinating the explosion with building system failures. She photographed the control panel with her equipment documentation camera, then began the careful process of electronic analysis. The circuitry was elegant in its complexity, incorporating redundant trigger systems, anti-tampering protections, and what appeared to be satellite communication capabilities. "Command, I'm seeing evidence of external communication linkages. This device may be receiving updates or instructions from a remote location." "What kind of updates?" Vanessa studied the communication module more carefully, identifying frequency, indicators, and signal strength displays. Possibly timing adjustments, abort codes, or premature detonation commands. The terrorists may be maintaining active control over the operation. "Can you disable the communication system?" "Not without risking activation of anti-tampering protocols. I need to understand the complete system architecture before attempting any modifications." As she continued her analysis, Vanessa began to recognize design patterns that triggered memories from her military service. The electronic layout matched intelligence reports she'd reviewed about a particular terrorist organization known for sophisticated urban attacks. More concerning, the anti-tampering systems bore hallmarks of Eastern European military explosive technology, suggesting state-level technical support. "Command, I'm identifying the device's origin. This appears to be the work of the Crimson Jihad network, specifically their technical specialist known as the Engineer. We have historical intelligence on his devices." Agent Chun's voice crackled through the radio with new urgency. "What kind of intelligence?" "The Engineer's devices typically include multiple independent detonation triggers, including seismic, electronic, chemical, and manual backup systems. Standard EOD approaches have a 90% failure rate against his designs. What's the successful approach?" Vanessa was already accessing the device's diagnostic interface, using electronic analysis tools to map the system's internal architecture. His devices follow a specific logical sequence for disarmament, but it requires identifying the primary control pathway and disabling subsystems in the correct order. How long does that process take? For someone familiar with his design philosophy, approximately 30 to 40 minutes. For someone encountering his work for the first time. Vanessa paused, calculating odds and timelines. Probably longer. Then we have. Martinez, are you saying this device can't be disarmed? I'm saying it can't be disarmed using conventional approaches. But I've studied the engineer's methodology extensively during my post-military academic research. His devices are logically consistent. If you understand his design philosophy, you can predict his protection mechanisms. Vanessa connected her electronic analysis equipment to the device's diagnostic port, immediately triggering a cascade of warning displays across the control panel. Red lights flashed in sequence, and a new timer appeared, 0 hours 5 minutes and 0 seconds and counting. Down rapidly. Command, I've activated an anti-tampering protocol. I have 5 minutes to complete an authentication sequence, or the device will detonate immediately. The command channel erupted in urgent voices, but Vanessa blocked out the noise and focused on the authentication interface. The engineer's devices typically required demonstration of specific technical knowledge to prevent accidental triggering by unsophisticated disposal attempts. Martinez, get out of there now. Negative command. If I disconnect my equipment, the 5-minute countdown continues and the device detonates. I have to complete the authentication sequence. Her fingers moved quickly across the electronic interface, entering technical specifications and disarmament codes based on her analysis of the engineer's previous devices. The authentication system was testing her knowledge of explosive chemistry, electronic circuit design, and sophisticated trigger mechanisms. 4 minutes, 30 seconds, Martinez. I'm aware of the timeline, command. I need absolute radio silence to complete this sequence. The authentication questions became increasingly complex, requiring detailed knowledge of specific terrorist organization protocols and technical methodologies. Vanessa realized that the engineer had designed this system to be accessible only to someone with extensive counterterrorism expertise, exactly the kind of specialized knowledge that had made her effective during her military service. 3 minutes, Martinez. Command, I said radio silence. With 2 minutes remaining on the authentication countdown, Vanessa entered the final sequence of technical codes. The device's control system processed her inputs for several agonizing seconds, then the red warning lights shifted to amber, and the 5-minute countdown disappeared. Authentication accepted appeared on the main display, followed by system access granted. Command, this is Martinez. Authentication complete. I now have access to the device's primary control systems. The relief in Agent Chun's voice was audible. Status report, Martinez. The device is stable and I have administrative access to all subsystems. But the main countdown is still active. 1 hour, 38 minutes remaining. I can now begin systematic disarmament, but I need to work through the engineer's protection layers methodically. What do you need from command? Continued monitoring of building systems and coordination with my former commanding officer. I need to verify my understanding of the engineer's latest design modifications. Vanessa began the process of mapping the device's internal architecture, identifying the relationships between different subsystems and the sequence required for safe disarmament. The engineer's designs were notoriously complex, incorporating false pathways designed to trigger detonation if approached incorrectly. Command, I'm sending you detailed photographs of the device's control systems. I need these forwarded to Naval Special Warfare Group 2 for analysis by specialists familiar with the engineer's work. Transmitting now, Martinez. As she worked, Vanessa became aware of a subtle vibration in the building structure. Barely perceptible, but definitely present. The sensation triggered memories from her military service. She'd felt similar vibrations in buildings that were structurally compromised or under stress. Command, I'm detecting structural vibrations. Are there any ongoing operations in the building? Negative. Buildings are evacuated, except for trapped personnel who are remaining stationary pending your operation. The vibrations continued, a rhythmic pattern that suggested mechanical activity somewhere else in the structure. Vanessa's tactical training kicked in, analyzing the implications of unexpected activity during a critical operation. Command, I need an immediate structural assessment of the entire building. These vibrations suggest we may have additional devices or ongoing sabotage operations. Stand by, Martinez. While waiting for the structural report, Vanessa continued working on the primary device, systematically identifying and documenting each subsystem. The engineer's work was masterful in its complexity. Every protective mechanism was interconnected, with multiple backup systems, creating a web of dependencies that had to be unraveled in precise sequence. Martinez, structural assessment indicates the vibrations are coming from sublevel 1. Building maintenance says there should be no active mechanical systems in that area. Command, we have a secondary threat. Someone or something is conducting additional operations while I'm focused on this device. What kind of operations? Vanessa's mind raced through the tactical possibilities. Either placement of additional devices or preparation for a forced detonation if I succeed in disarming this one. The terrorists may have anticipated that their primary device could be neutralized. Are you recommending we send teams to investigate sublevel 1? Negative. Any additional personnel in the building increase the risk of triggering proximity sensors or backup detonation systems. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that disarming this device triggers a secondary attack. Agent Chun's voice carried new tension. Martinez, we're also receiving reports of suspicious activity near other financial centers in the city. This may be part of a coordinated multi-target attack. The strategic implications were staggering. If the Westgate bombing was part of a larger operation targeting multiple financial institutions, successful neutralization here might trigger premature attacks elsewhere. Conversely, failure here could provide cover for attacks that were supposed to be synchronized. Command, I need a decision. Do I continue with the disarmament of this device, or do we accept detonation here to potentially prevent larger casualties elsewhere? Continue with disarmament, Martinez. We have other teams responding to the secondary threats. Vanessa returned her focus to the device, but her mind was now processing multiple threat scenarios simultaneously. The vibrations from sublevel 1 continued, suggesting ongoing activity that could complicate her operation at any moment. Command, this is Martinez. I've completed analysis of the primary subsystems. I'm ready to begin the disarmament sequence, but I need to warn you the engineer's devices typically include a vital protection mechanism activated during the last phase of disarmament. What kind of protection mechanism? Unknown until triggered. His devices are designed to be unique, incorporating site-specific elements that can't be predicted in advance. Are you saying the last phase of disarmament is essentially experimental? Vanessa looked at the countdown timer. 1 hour 22 minutes and 45 seconds. 1 hour 22 minutes remaining. Around her, the structural vibrations continued, indicating that whatever was happening on sublevel 1 was still in progress. Command, disarming sophisticated terrorist devices is always experimental to some degree. But I have sufficient understanding of the engineer's methodology to attempt neutralization with reasonable probability of success. Define reasonable. 75% success rate for systematic disarmament, assuming no external interference from whatever's happening on sublevel 1. And if the secondary activity interferes? Vanessa studied the device's proximity sensors and backup trigger systems. calculating the impact of potential structural disturbances or electromagnetic interference. Unknown variables make probability calculations meaningless, but attempting. Disarmament is still our best option for preventing certain casualties. Proceed with disarmament, Martinez. We're monitoring the secondary threat and will advise if the situation changes. Vanessa began the systematic process of disabling the engineer's protection systems, starting with the outermost defensive layers and working toward the primary detonation controls. Each step required careful analysis and precise execution. Single error would trigger immediate detonation of enough explosive to bring down half the building. Command, first protection layer is disabled. Moving to secondary systems. Copy, Martinez. Be advised, structural analysis indicates the sublevel. One activity has moved to sublevel 2. Whatever's happening is getting closer to your position. As Vanessa worked deeper into the device's control systems, she began to understand the full scope of the engineer's plan. This wasn't just a building attack. It was a demonstration of technical sophistication designed to prove that Western counter-terrorism capabilities were inadequate against properly planned operations. Command, I'm beginning to see the psychological component of this attack. The engineer designed this device to be just sophisticated enough to challenge the best available expertise. Success or failure. The operation demonstrates either American technical inadequacy or the terrorists' ability to force highly trained specialists into life-threatening situations. Are you saying this is a propaganda operation? I'm saying it's both a practical attack and a psychological warfare demonstration. The engineer wants either spectacular success or spectacular failure. Both outcomes serve his strategic objectives. With that realization, Vanessa understood that she was engaged in more than bomb disposal. She was participating in a contest of technical expertise with global implications, fighting not just to save lives in Phoenix, but to prevent the kind of psychological victory that could inspire similar attacks worldwide. Command, I'm accessing the device's core systems now. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next few minutes. The structural vibration suddenly intensified, sending a tremor through the concrete floor that Vanessa felt in her bones. At the same moment, her analysis equipment detected an electromagnetic pulse emanating from somewhere within the building, the signature of additional electronic devices activating. Command, we have a major escalation. I'm detecting electromagnetic signatures consistent with multiple explosive devices coming online simultaneously. Agent Chun's voice crackled through the radio with barely controlled urgency. Martinez, we're showing seismic activity throughout the building. How does this affect your current operation? Vanessa's hands continued working on the device's control systems even as her mind processed the implications. The primary device is designed to coordinate with secondary systems. The engineer didn't just plant one bomb, he created a network of interconnected devices that activate in sequence. How many devices are we dealing with? Unknown, but the electromagnetic signatures suggest at least 4 additional locations. Vanessa paused her disarmament work to photograph the new data appearing on the device's communication panel. Command, this device is receiving status updates from the secondary locations. I can see their activation sequences and countdown synchronization. The revelation transformed their understanding of the threat entirely. Instead of neutralizing a single device, they were facing a coordinated attack system designed to bring down the entire 40-story structure through sequential detonations at critical structural points. Martinez, can you access the secondary devices through the primary control system? Negative. The network is designed with one-way communication for security purposes. The primary device receives status updates, but can't send control commands to the secondary units. Agent Chun was coordinating with multiple agencies simultaneously, her voice overlapping with radio chatter from building engineers, federal bomb teams, and emergency response coordinators. Martinez, structural engineers are saying that multiple, coordinated explosions could trigger a complete building collapse. We're looking at potential casualties in the thousands. Vanessa studied the network status display more carefully, identifying patterns in the secondary device locations and timing sequences. Command: the secondary devices are positioned to create a progressive structural failure starting from the top floors and cascading downward. The primary device I'm working on is designed to destroy the foundation supports after the upper floors have already begun collapsing. What's the timeline for secondary device activation? According to the network status, the rooftop devices activate in 57 minutes, followed by devices on floors 30, 20, and 10 at 3-minute intervals. The primary device detonates last, ensuring complete structural destruction. The mathematical precision was terrifying in its efficiency. The engineer had calculated the exact sequence needed to guarantee that no one in the building could survive the collapse, while also maximizing the psychological impact of watching a major skyscraper disintegrate in slow motion. Command: I need to revise our operational approach. Disarming just the primary device won't prevent the attack. We need to neutralize the entire network. How do we do that? The network depends on synchronized timing controlled by satellite communication signals. If we can jam the satellite link, the secondary devices will default to independent timer mode, which gives us access to individual disarmament. Agent Chun was consulting with federal technical specialists, their conversation punctuated by the sound of helicopters and emergency vehicles repositioning around the building. Martinez: we're being told that jamming satellite communications over a major metropolitan area requires federal authorization that could take hours to obtain. Then we need an alternative approach. Vanessa returned her attention to the primary device, looking for vulnerabilities in the engineer's design that hadn't been apparent during her initial analysis. Command: I'm seeing a potential weakness in the network architecture. The primary device isn't just receiving status updates, it's also providing network stability signals to the secondary units. Explain. If the secondary devices lose contact with the primary unit, they're programmed to abort their missions rather than risk uncoordinated detonation. The engineer designed the system to fail safely if communication is disrupted. You saying that disabling the primary device will neutralize the entire network? Vanessa studied the communication protocols more carefully, tracing the signal pathways and identifying the specific systems responsible for network coordination. Not disabling reprogramming. I need to modify the primary device's communication system to send abort codes to the secondary units. Can you do that? The engineer's devices include diagnostic modes for testing network connectivity. If I can access those systems, I might be able to send false status updates that trigger the secondary device's abort protocols. Agent Chun's voice carried new hope mixed with skepticism. What's the risk of attempting that modification? If I make an error in the communication protocols, all devices could detonate immediately instead of aborting. If I succeed, the entire network shuts down and I can then safely disarm the primary device. What are the odds of success? Vanessa looked at the countdown timer. 0 hours 56 minutes and 14 seconds. 56 minutes remaining. Around her, the structural vibrations had settled into a steady rhythm, suggesting that the secondary devices were conducting pre-detonation system checks. Honestly, I don't know. I'm in uncharted territory here. The engineer's communication protocols are more sophisticated than anything in my training or experience. Martinez, we're receiving reports that similar attacks may be underway in Denver and Seattle. If this is part of a coordinated national operation, your success or failure here could influence the outcomes elsewhere. The weight of that responsibility was almost paralyzing. Vanessa forced herself to focus on the immediate technical challenges rather than the broader implications. Command, I need absolute radio silence for the next 20 minutes while I attempt to access the communication systems. Any external signal interference could trigger the abort attempt prematurely. Copy, Martinez. You have radio silence. Vanessa began the delicate process of accessing the engineer's communication protocols, using her analysis equipment to map the signal pathways and identify the specific commands used for network coordination. The work required the kind of precise electronic manipulation she'd mastered during her military service, but applied to systems far more complex than anything she'd encountered in combat. The communication module's interface was protected by multiple layers of encryption and authentication, each layer requiring demonstration of specific technical knowledge. As she worked through the security systems, Vanessa began to appreciate the full scope of the engineer's expertise. This wasn't just sophisticated bomb making, it was a demonstration of advanced computer science, electronic engineering, and psychological warfare combined into a single weapon system. 15 minutes into the communication hack, Vanessa encountered a subsystem she didn't recognize. The protocol suggested real-time video monitoring capabilities, implying that the engineer was watching her progress remotely. "He's watching me," she whispered to herself, then activated her radio for a brief transmission. "Command, be advised that the device includes video surveillance capabilities. The terrorists may be monitoring my disarmament attempts in real time. Does that change your approach? It means they can trigger manual detonation if they determine I'm likely to succeed. I need to complete the network shutdown before they realize what I'm attempting." Vanessa returned to the communication hack with new urgency, working to complete the protocol modifications before the remote monitoring detected her true intentions. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was engaged in a real-time technical duel with one of the world's most sophisticated terrorist bomb makers, while he watched her every move through his own surveillance systems, with 38 minutes remaining. On the countdown, Vanessa successfully accessed the primary device's network communication controls. The interface displayed the status of all secondary devices: 4 rooftop units, 3 upper-floor devices, 2 mid-level bombs, and 1 sub-level unit in addition to her primary device. 10 secondary devices, she murmured, studying the network. Topology. He planned to bring down the entire building in stages. The abort command sequence was more complex than she'd anticipated, requiring specific authentication codes for each individual device, followed by a master shutdown command. Worse, the protocol included verification systems designed to confirm that each secondary device had actually received and processed its abort command. "Command, I've accessed the network controls, but the shutdown sequence is going to take at least 20 minutes to complete properly. During that time, any external interference could trigger immediate detonation of all devices simultaneously." What kind of external interference? Radio signals, electromagnetic pulses, structural vibrations above a certain threshold, or manual override commands from the remote monitoring system. Agent Chun was coordinating with building engineers and federal specialists. They're urgent. Discussions audible in the background of her radio transmissions. "Martinez, building engineers are reporting unusual stress patterns in the upper floors. The secondary devices may be conducting structural integrity testing as part of their pre-detonation sequence, which means we're running out of time regardless of the countdown displays. If the building's structural integrity is being compromised by the testing procedures, we could have catastrophic failure before the devices actually detonate." Vanessa began transmitting abort commands to the secondary devices, starting with the rooftop units that posed the greatest immediate structural threat. Each command required careful authentication and verification, processes that had been designed to prevent accidental or unauthorized shutdown. The first rooftop device acknowledged the abort command after 3 minutes of protocol exchanges. Its status changed from armed to SAFE on Vanessa's network display, Command, first secondary device neutralized. 9 remaining. Copy, Martinez. Be advised that federal teams in Denver and Seattle are reporting similar, coordinated attacks with network-based device configurations. Your experience here is being transmitted to assist their operations. The second and third rooftop devices responded to abort commands more quickly, suggesting that Vanessa was becoming more efficient with the engineer's protocols. But the fourth rooftop device generated an error message. Abort command rejected, manual override active. Command, we have a problem. One of the rooftop devices is rejecting abort commands. The terrorists have activated manual override from their remote monitoring position. Can you bypass the manual override? Unknown. I'd need to access that specific device's individual control systems, which means either physical access to the rooftop or a much more sophisticated hacking approach through the network. Agent Chun was consulting with federal technical specialists. Their conversation urgent and complex. Martinez, can you continue neutralizing the other devices while we work on the manual override problem? Affirmative, but the manual override device creates a cascading failure risk. If it detonates while I'm working on the others, the electromagnetic pulse could trigger premature detonation of partially neutralized devices. Vanessa continued working through the abort sequence for the remaining secondary devices successfully, neutralizing the 3 upper floor units and both mid-level devices. But as she began working on the sub-level device, her analysis equipment detected incoming communication signals that weren't part of the engineer's original network. Command, I'm detecting external communication attempts targeting this device. Someone is trying to establish direct contact with the primary bomb's control systems. Who would be making those attempts? Either the engineer trying to regain control, or possibly federal specialists attempting to provide remote assistance. The incoming signals were using military-grade encryption and sophisticated communication protocols that suggested government origin rather than terrorist activity. Vanessa made the decision to accept the incoming connection, hoping for technical support rather than external interference. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Blake, Naval Special Warfare Group 2, Martinez. Can you hear me? Relief flooded through Vanessa as she recognized the voice of one of her former colleagues, someone with extensive experience in sophisticated explosive device neutralization. Commander Blake, this is Martinez. I have network access to 10 secondary devices, 9 neutralized, 1 rejecting abort commands due to manual override. Copy, Martinez. We've been monitoring your progress through federal technical intelligence. The manual override device is a standard engineer failsafe. You can bypass it using a cascade shutdown protocol, but it requires precise timing coordination with the primary device. What kind of timing coordination? You need to initiate primary device shutdown at the exact moment the manual override device begins its final detonation sequence. The cascade protocol uses the primary device's destruction signal to trigger emergency abort on all remaining secondary units. The concept was brilliant in its complexity, using the controlled destruction of the primary device to prevent the catastrophic destruction of all devices. But it required timing precision measured in seconds, with no margin for error. Commander Blake, what's the success rate for cascade shutdown protocols? Against engineer devices? Unknown. This would be the first attempted implementation of the theoretical protocol. Vanessa looked at the countdown timer. 0 hours 19 minutes and 42 seconds. 19 minutes remaining. She had successfully neutralized 9 of 10 secondary devices, but the remaining device and the primary bomb still contained enough explosive to bring down a significant portion of the building. Command, I'm going to attempt the cascade shutdown protocol. If it succeeds, all devices are neutralized. If it fails, immediate detonation of all remaining explosive material. Martinez, are you certain this is our best option? Vanessa studied the network display, the cascade protocol specifications, and the countdown timers one final time. Command, it's our only option. In 19 minutes, the manual override device detonates regardless of any other considerations. The cascade protocol is the only way to prevent that detonation. Proceed with cascade shutdown, Martinez. All agencies are standing by. As Vanessa prepared to implement the most dangerous bomb disposal procedure she'd ever attempted, she realized that her success or failure would be determined in the next few minutes. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd trained for, everything she believed about her own capabilities was about to be tested against the most sophisticated explosive threat she'd ever encountered. The engineer had designed his network to be virtually impossible to neutralize using conventional approaches. Now Vanessa was about to find out whether unconventional approaches could succeed where traditional methods had failed. Martinez, before you attempt the cascade protocol, we need to establish a coordinated support network. Commander Blake's voice carried through the radio with professional urgency. This procedure requires simultaneous technical assistance from multiple specialists. Vanessa paused her preparation work, recognizing the wisdom in Blake's caution. The cascade shutdown was theoretical at best, and attempting it without proper support could result in immediate catastrophe. What kind of support network? I'm coordinating with a joint task force that includes EOD specialists from 3 different military branches, FBI technical analysts, and NSA cryptographic experts. We need to synchronize our efforts to give you the best possible chance of success. Agent Chun's voice joined the conversation from the command vehicle. Commander Blake, what's the timeline for establishing this support network? We have specialists standing by in secure communication centers in Virginia, Colorado, and California. But we need to establish encrypted communication links and verify that all participants understand the technical requirements. Vanessa checked the countdown timer. 0 hours 17 minutes and 28 seconds. 17 minutes remaining. Commander, 17 minutes isn't enough time to coordinate a complex multi-agency operation. That's why we're not starting from scratch. The specialists have been analyzing your progress in real time through federal technical intelligence monitoring. They're already familiar with the engineer's device architecture and your neutralization work. A new voice joined the communication network, crisp and authoritative. Ms. Martinez, this is Dr. Elizabeth Harper, NSA Cryptographic Analysis Division. I've been reviewing the engineer's communication protocols, and I believe we can enhance your cascade shutdown approach. Dr. Harper, what kind of enhancements? The manual override device that's rejecting your abort commands is using a secondary encryption system that we've encountered in other terrorist operations. If I can provide you with the correct decryption keys, you might be able to neutralize that device conventionally instead of relying on the cascade protocol. Vanessa felt a surge of hope mixed with skepticism. What's the probability that your decryption keys will work? Based on pattern analysis of the engineer's previous operations, approximately 60%. But attempting conventional neutralization of the manual override device won't compromise your ability to fall back on the cascade protocol if the decryption approach fails. Another voice joined the network, this one with a slight southern accent. Martinez, this is Major Tom Rodriguez, Army ED. I'm coordinating the physical aspects of the support operation from Fort Campbell. We have helicopter-based technical support positioned near your building in case you need real-time equipment delivery. What kind of equipment? Advanced electromagnetic pulse generators, focused radio jamming systems, and emergency extraction capabilities if you need to evacuate before attempting the cascade protocol. Agent Chun was coordinating with multiple federal agencies from the command vehicle, her voice overlapping with radio traffic from various emergency response teams. All specialists, be advised that we're now receiving confirmation of coordinated Attacks in 4 additional cities. Phoenix appears to be the primary target, with secondary operations designed to activate if this attack fails. The strategic implications were staggering. Vanessa wasn't just trying to save the Westgate financial center, she was attempting to prevent a coordinated national terrorism campaign designed to destabilize the entire American financial system. Dr. Harper, how quickly can you transmit the decryption keys? I'm sending them through encrypted military communication channels now. But Martinez, these keys are based on pattern analysis rather than direct intelligence. There's a significant risk that the engineer modified his encryption specifically for this operation. Vanessa's equipment received the transmitted decryption keys, complex alphanumeric sequences that would unlock the manual override device's communication systems if Dr. Harper's analysis was correct. Decryption keys received, beginning implementation now. Martinez, before you attempt the decryption, I need to brief you on the cascade protocol modifications that our joint analysis has developed, Commander Blake said. Major Rodriguez and I have identified potential improvements to the timing sequence that could increase your success probability. What kind of modifications? Major Rodriguez took the lead. The original cascade protocol assumes that the primary device's destruction signal will propagate instantaneously to all secondary devices. But our analysis suggests there may be a 3 to 5 second delay in signal transmission, which creates a window for partial detonation of secondary devices. How do we compensate for transmission delays? By pre-positioning the secondary devices in a partial shutdown state before initiating the primary device cascade. If you can access each device's communication system and prepare them for emergency abort, the cascade signal will trigger immediate shutdown instead of having to propagate through multiple authentication layers. Dr. Harper added technical details. The pre-positioning process requires sending preparation codes to each secondary device without actually triggering abort procedures. Think of it as arming the devices for emergency shutdown while leaving them functionally active. Vanessa began implementing the decryption keys on the manual override device while simultaneously analyzing the cascade protocol modifications. The multitasking required the kind of intense concentration she developed during combat operations, focusing on immediate technical requirements while maintaining awareness of broader tactical considerations. Manual override device is accepting the decryption keys, she reported. I'm gaining access to its communication systems now. Copy, Martinez. What's the device status? Still rejecting abort commands, but I can see the manual override protocols. Someone is actively maintaining remote control, probably through a satellite communication link. Commander Blake consulted with technical specialists at her location. Martinez, if the terrorists are maintaining active control, they can trigger immediate detonation if they determine you're likely to succeed. We need to complete the preparation sequence as quickly as possible. How much time do we have? Unknown. But federal intelligence suggests that terrorist operations of this sophistication typically include observation posts with real-time visual monitoring of target areas. They may be watching the building and your progress directly. Agent Chun confirmed the concern from her command position. Martinez, we've identified 3 suspected observation posts on surrounding buildings with clear sight lines to the Westgate. Center. Counter-surveillance teams are moving to investigate, but the terrorists may already know that their primary operation has been compromised. Vanessa continued working on the manual override device while processing the implications of direct terrorist surveillance. If the engineer was watching her progress, he would recognize that she was achieving far more success than his device security was designed to permit. That recognition could trigger immediate manual detonation of all devices regardless of the established timeline. All specialists, I'm implementing the cascade preparation sequence now. Each secondary device will show prep status when ready for an emergency abort. Dr. Harper monitored the communication protocols from her NSA facility. Martinez, I'm seeing successful preparation signals from 8 of 9 secondary devices. The manual override device is still maintaining independent status. Can you identify the source of the manual override control? Working on it. The control signals are being routed through multiple satellite relays and VPN networks. Sophisticated operational security, but we're tracing the communication pathways. Major Rodriguez provided tactical updates from his Fort Campbell Coordination Center. Martinez, our helicopter-based support teams are detecting electromagnetic signatures that suggest the terrorists may be preparing to evacuate their observation posts. That typically indicates immediate operation termination. Are they planning to trigger an early detonation? Unknown, but federal protocols recommend treating evacuation preparations as indicators of imminent attack initiation. Vanessa looked at the countdown timer, 0 hours 11 minutes and 47 seconds. 11 minutes remaining on the original timeline. But the terrorist evacuation suggested that the actual timeline might be much shorter. All specialists, I need a decision. Do I attempt conventional neutralization of the manual override device using Dr. Harper's decryption? Or do I proceed directly to the Cascade protocol? Commander Blake consulted with the Joint Task Force specialists before responding. Martinez, our collective assessment is that you should attempt conventional neutralization first. If it fails, you'll still have time to implement the Cascade protocol. If it succeeds, you can neutralize all devices using conventional approaches. Dr. Harper, what's your confidence level on the decryption approach? Higher than when we started. Pattern analysis of the manual override device's responses suggests it's using encryption variants we've encountered before. I'm transmitting an updated decryption sequence that should have approximately 75% success probability. Vanessa received the updated decryption codes and began implementing them on the manual override device. The process required careful authentication through multiple security layers, each one designed to prevent unauthorized access to the device's control systems. Manual override device is accepting the updated decryption sequence, she reported. I'm gaining administrative access to its control protocols. What's the device status now? Still under remote control, but I can see the command pathways. The terrorists are maintaining active monitoring and control through a sophisticated communication network. Dr. Harper was analyzing the communication data in real time from her NSA facility. Martinez, I've identified the remote control source. The signal is originating from a mobile command center approximately 2 miles from your location. Federal teams are being dispatched to investigate. How long until they reach the mobile command center? 15 to 20 minutes, assuming the Cathay. Terrorists don't relocate before our teams arrive. Agent Chun coordinated with federal tactical teams from the command vehicle. All units, be advised that engaging the mobile command center could trigger immediate detonation of all devices as a final terrorist action. Approach with extreme caution. Major Rodriguez provided additional tactical analysis. Martinez, even if we neutralize the mobile command center, the engineer's devices typically include dead man switches that trigger automatic detonation if they lose communication with their controllers for more than a specified time period. What's the typical dead man switch timeline? 5 to 10 minutes for sophisticated devices. Vanessa realized that the operation had reached a critical decision point. Conventional neutralization might succeed, but it would trigger the dead man switch timeline. The Cascade protocol was still untested, but it offered the possibility of immediate neutralization without depending on extended communication with external controllers. All specialists, I'm seeing something new on the manual override device. There's a countdown timer that wasn't visible before, 0 hours 7 minutes and 30 seconds and decreasing rapidly. Commander Blake's voice carried new urgency. Martinez, what kind of countdown? Unknown. But it appears to be independent of the main device countdown. Possibly a dead man switch that's already been activated. Dr. Harper was analyzing the new timer data. Martinez, that countdown matches the pattern for anti-tampering protocols triggered when external agencies gain too much access to device. Control systems. The terrorists know we're close to neutralizing their operation. How much time do we have? 7 minutes until the anti-tampering protocol triggers automatic detonation of all devices simultaneously. Vanessa looked at the main countdown timer, 0 hours 9 minutes and 15 seconds. 9 minutes on the original timeline. 7 minutes on the anti-tampering protocol. She was running out of time regardless of which approach she chose. All specialists, I need an immediate decision. Conventional neutralization or cascade protocol. Major Rodriguez provided the tactical assessment. Martinez, conventional neutralization requires at least 10 minutes to complete properly. The cascade protocol can be implemented in under 5 minutes. Commander Blake added her analysis. But the cascade protocol is completely untested. We're literally experimenting with theoretical procedures on live explosive devices. Dr. Harper contributed the cryptographic perspective. The anti-tampering countdown suggests that the engineer anticipated our intervention and designed specific countermeasures. Conventional approaches may trigger additional security protocols we haven't identified yet. Agent Chun provided the strategic context. Martinez, Federal intelligence reports that attacks in other cities are being delayed pending the outcome of your operation. Your success or failure here will determine whether we face additional coordinated attacks elsewhere. Vanessa studied all the available data device schematics, countdown timers, communication protocols, and tactical assessments from multiple specialists. The decision she made in the next few seconds would determine the survival of everyone trapped in the Westgate financial center and potentially influence the success of terrorist operations across the entire country. All specialists, I'm implementing the Cascade Protocol, beginning the final preparation sequence now. As she initiated the most dangerous and experimental bomb disposal procedure ever attempted, Vanessa realized that her transformation from community college instructor to counterterrorism specialist was complete. She was no longer just someone with technical knowledge. She had become the focal point of a complex international operation with implications far beyond anything she had imagined when she first entered the building. The next few minutes would determine whether her expertise and the combined knowledge of America's best technical specialists could defeat one of the most sophisticated terrorist attacks in modern history. The Cascade Protocol initiation required Vanessa to simultaneously coordinate 17 different technical operations while monitoring multiple countdown timers and communication channels. Her hands moved with mechanical precision across the device's control interface, entering commands that had never been tested outside of theoretical simulations. For all specialists, cascade preparation is 60% complete. Secondary devices are entering standby mode for emergency abort. Dr. Harper monitored the communication protocols from her NSA facility, tracking signal pathways and authentication sequences. Martinez, I'm detecting interference in the satellite communication links. The terrorists may be attempting to regain control of their network. Can you block the interference? Working on it, but they're using military-grade jamming equipment. We may lose communication with the secondary devices before you complete the preparation sequence. Vanessa's equipment displayed a new warning message. External interference detected, network stability compromised. The engineer's fail-safe systems were activated in response to the prolonged technical manipulation, creating additional layers of complexity that threatened to overwhelm even her extensive expertise. Anti-tampering countdown shows 0 hours 4 minutes and 17 seconds remaining. She reported, Cascade preparation is at 75%. I need 3 more minutes to complete the sequence properly. Commander Blake coordinated with federal tactical teams from her Virginia facility. Martinez, ground teams have located the mobile command center. They're requesting permission to engage, but tactical assessment suggests immediate engagement. We'll trigger dead man switch protocols. How long can they maintain surveillance without being detected? Unknown. The terrorists appear to be conducting their own counter-surveillance operations. Visual contact could be lost at any moment. Major. Rodriguez provided real-time tactical updates from Fort Campbell. Martinez, our electromagnetic monitoring is detecting power fluctuations throughout the building. The secondary devices may be conducting final system checks before the anti-tampering protocol expires. Vanessa felt the familiar cold focus that had carried her through the most dangerous moments of her military service. Every variable was converging toward a critical decision point where success and failure would be separated by seconds rather than minutes. All specialists, I'm detecting automated systems activation throughout the device network. The engineer designed these devices to complete their mission automatically if external interference exceeds preset thresholds. What does that mean for the Cascade protocol? It means I have to trigger the Cascade sequence before the automated systems lock me out of the network entirely. Dr. Harper was analyzing communication data streams in real time. Martinez, I'm seeing evidence that the automated systems include backup detonation protocols that bypass the normal countdown timers. If those systems fully activate, the Cascade protocol may not be able to prevent immediate detonation. The anti-tampering countdown reached 0 hours 3 minutes and 0 seconds as Vanessa completed the Cascade preparation sequence. All secondary devices showed standby status, ready for emergency abort commands. But the primary device's control systems were beginning to display warning messages indicating that automated backup systems were taking control. All specialists, I'm initiating the Cascade protocol now. This is our last opportunity before the automated systems lock out all external control. Vanessa's hands moved through the final command sequence, entering the Cascade trigger codes that would either neutralize the entire network or detonate every device simultaneously. The theoretical nature of the procedure meant that even the specialists supporting her couldn't predict the outcome with certainty. Cascade protocol initiated appeared on the primary device's display, followed immediately by a series of status updates from the secondary devices. One by one, they began transitioning from standby to abort sequence active. Martinez, we're showing successful abort initiation on 8 of 9 secondary devices, Dr. Harper reported. The manual override device is still maintaining independent status. Can you trace its source? The signal is coming from... Wait, that's impossible. Dr. Harper, what are you seeing? The manual override device is receiving control signals from inside the building. There's someone else in the Westgate Center with direct access to the device network. Agent Chun coordinated immediate response from the command vehicle. All units, we have an unidentified individual inside the building with access to terrorist communication systems. This could be a bomber conducting final oversight of the operation. Vanessa continued monitoring the Cascade protocol while processing the implications of an additional terrorist presence in the building. For all specialists, the primary device Cascade is at 60% completion. But if there's someone manually controlling the override device, they can trigger immediate detonation regardless of the automated systems. Where in the building is the control signal originating? Dr. Harper analyzed communication data streams with new urgency. Sublevel 1, approximately 200 meters from Martinez's position. The signal strength suggests sophisticated equipment, possibly a complete backup command center. Major Rodriguez coordinated a tactical response from Fort Campbell. Martinez, do we abort the Cascade protocol and attempt to locate the individual? Controlling the override device? Negative. The cascade protocol is our only chance of neutralizing the secondary devices. If I abort now, the anti-tampering countdown will trigger automatic detonation in 90 seconds. The primary device's display showed cascade completion at 80%, with successful abort confirmations from 8 secondary devices. But the manual override device continued to reject all neutralization attempts, its control systems responding to commands from the unknown individual on sublevel 1. All specialists, I need a tactical decision. Do we accept partial success with 9 of 10 devices neutralized, or do we risk everything on an attempt to neutralize the final device? Commander. Blake consulted with federal tactical specialists before responding. Martinez, partial success isn't acceptable. The manual override device contains sufficient explosive to bring down a significant portion of the building. We need complete neutralization. Then I'm going to sublevel 1 to locate the individual controlling the override device. Martinez. That's suicide. You'd be leaving the primary device during the final phase of the cascade protocol. The cascade protocol is automated now. The primary device will complete its sequence whether I'm present or not. But the manual override device requires direct intervention. Agent Chun coordinated with building security from the command vehicle. Martinez building layout shows sublevel 1 contains the main electrical distribution center and emergency generator systems. If the terrorists have established a command center there, they have access to all building infrastructure. Vanessa completed the cascade protocol implementation with 95% success. The primary device began its final shutdown sequence, systematically disabling detonation systems and neutralizing explosive components. But the manual override device remained active, its countdown timer showing 0 hours 2 minutes and 45 seconds remaining. All specialists, I'm leaving the primary device to locate the sublevel 1 control source. The cascade protocol will complete automatically, but someone needs to neutralize the override device manually. Martinez, you're not equipped for close quarters combat with armed terrorists. I'm equipped with 4 years of community college instruction in problem solving and improvisation. Sometimes that's enough. Vanessa gathered her essential equipment and began moving through the parking garage toward the stairwell access to sublevel 1. The building's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the concrete surfaces, creating an environment that felt more like a tomb than an office building. Command, I'm approaching sublevel 1 access. What intelligence do we have on the individual controlling the override device? Dr. Harper provided real-time analysis from her NS facility. Communication signatures suggest military-grade equipment, operated by someone with extensive technical training. Possibly the engineer himself conducting final oversight of the operation. The possibility that she might be about to confront one of the world's most sophisticated terrorist bomb makers sent a chill through Vanessa's system. But the countdown timer on the override device continued its relentless progression. 0 hours 1 minute and 58 seconds remaining. All specialists, I'm entering sublevel now. The override device countdown shows less than 2 minutes remaining. The sublevel 1 area was a maze of electrical equipment, backup generators, and building infrastructure systems. But Vanessa's trained eye immediately identified equipment that didn't belong. Sophisticated computer systems, satellite communication arrays, and multiple display screens showing real-time status of the device network dotted the center of the improvised command. Center sat a figure in dark clothing, his attention focused on multiple keyboards and displays. As Vanessa approached carefully, she could see that he was approximately 50 years old, with the kind of intense concentration she associated with technical specialists under pressure. The engineer, I presume? The figure looked up, revealing a face that was surprisingly ordinary despite belonging to one of the world's most wanted terrorists. Ms. Martinez, I've been watching your progress with considerable interest. Your technical skills are impressive, though ultimately inadequate for the complexity of my devices. Your devices have been neutralized. 9 of 10 secondary devices are disabled, and the primary device is completing its cascade shutdown sequence. The engineer smiled with what appeared to be genuine amusement. Ms. Martinez, you've succeeded in disabling the obvious components of my network. But did you really think a man of my reputation would rely on devices that could be neutralized by a single individual, however skilled? He gestured toward his display screens, which showed not 10 devices but 27, distributed throughout the building and surrounding area. The devices you've been working on were designed to focus your attention while the real network prepared for activation. Vanessa felt the cold realization that everything she'd accomplished might have been an elaborate deception. The countdown timer on the override device? Quite real, but not connected to the device you think it's controlling. That timer represents the activation sequence for the real network, which includes devices in the building's foundation, the parking structure, and several surrounding buildings. The strategic brilliance was terrifying in its scope. The engineer had created a false network designed to occupy the attention of responding specialists while his real operation proceeded undetected. What do you want? I want you to understand that Western counter-terrorism capabilities are fundamentally inadequate against properly planned operations. Your success today was an illusion, a demonstration of false competence. Vanessa studied the displays showing the real device network, analyzing locations and capabilities while the engineer continued his explanation. The actual explosive placement was designed to create a catastrophic failure affecting not just the Westgate Financial Center, but several blocks of downtown Phoenix. The timer shows 47 seconds remaining. Even if you could understand my real network, you couldn't neutralize 27 devices in under a minute. But Vanessa was already analyzing the network architecture displayed on the engineer's screens. Her experience with his design philosophy during the false network operation had taught her to recognize patterns in his technical approach. Your real network uses the same cascade protocol vulnerabilities as your false network. Impossible. The real devices operate completely differently. Vanessa had already moved to the engineer's primary control station, her hands flying across the keyboards as she implemented the same cascade protocol modifications that had succeeded with the false network. The real devices were more sophisticated, but they followed the same logical architecture. 32 seconds remaining. Ms. Martinez, you cannot possibly ... Cascade protocol initiated appeared across multiple displays as the real device network began responding to Vanessa's commands. The engineer's expression shifted from confident amusement to genuine alarm as his sophisticated operation began shutting down under the assault of techniques he believed were inadequate. 21 seconds remaining. One by one, the real devices began transitioning to abort status. The engineer desperately attempted to regain control of his network, but Vanessa's cascade protocol implementation was moving faster than his manual override attempts. 12 seconds remaining. This is impossible. No one understands my systems well enough to ... 7 seconds remaining. The final devices in the network showed abort complete status as the countdown timer reached 0 hours 0 minutes and 5 seconds. 3 seconds remaining. Vanessa entered the final cascade termination command, 0 hours 0 minutes and 3 seconds. The countdown timer froze, then displayed network terminated, all devices safe. 2 seconds. The engineer stared at his displays in shocked disbelief as his entire operation, both false and real networks, showed complete neutralization. You just defeated the most sophisticated terrorist attack in modern history with 3 seconds remaining. Actually, I just did my job. I neutralized explosive threats and protected civilian lives. Agent Chun's voice crackled through Vanessa's radio with barely controlled excitement. Martinez, we're showing complete network shutdown on all monitoring systems. Are you confirming that all devices have been neutralized? Affirmative, Command. All 27 devices in the real network are confirmed safe. The terrorist operation has been completely defeated. What's your status? Vanessa looked at the engineer, who was sitting in stunned silence among his disabled equipment. I have the primary terrorist in custody, and I'm ready for extraction. Federal tactical teams are en route to your location. Outstanding work. Martinez. As she waited for the tactical teams to arrive, Vanessa reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from community college instructor to the focal point of a major counter-terrorism operation. Her colleagues at Henderson Technical College would probably never believe that their quiet electronics instructor had just prevented one of the most sophisticated terrorist attacks in American history. Ms. Martinez, the engineer said quietly, how did you learn to think like me? I didn't learn to think like you. I learned to think like an engineer who wanted to build something better instead of destroying what others had built. 3 hours later, Vanessa stood in the command vehicle as federal agencies coordinated the massive investigation and evidence collection operation that would follow the engineer's capture. Buildings throughout downtown Phoenix were being systematically searched for additional devices, though her cascade protocol had apparently neutralized the entire network. Martinez, Agent Chun said, approaching with a tablet full of official documents. I have preliminary reports from Denver, Seattle, and the other cities where coordinated attacks were planned. Your success here triggered the abort of all secondary operations. You've prevented what could have been the most devastating terrorist campaign in American history. What happens now? Now you become the most famous EOD specialist in the world, whether you want to or not. The media is already calling you the professor in honor of your academic background. Dr. Harper joined them from her secured communication station. Ms. Martinez, I've been analyzing the engineer's real network architecture. The cascade protocol modifications you developed during this operation represent a genuine breakthrough in counterterrorism technology. The Department of Defense wants to discuss incorporating your techniques into standard EOD training. Commander Blake appeared on the communication screen from her Virginia facility. Martinez, I've been authorized to offer you a position with Naval Special Warfare Group 2 as a technical specialist. Your skills are exactly what we need for emerging terrorist threats. Major Rodriguez added his voice from Fort Campbell. The Army EOD School is requesting permission to develop a curriculum based on your operational methods. What you accomplish today needs to be shared with specialists throughout the military. Vanessa looked around at the federal agents, military specialists, and emergency responders who had supported her operation. 6 hours ago, she'd been a community college instructor whom her colleagues considered barely qualified for her position. Now she is being recruited by every major counterterrorism organization in the government. Agent Chen, what happened to the people who were trapped in the building? Complete successful evacuation. No casualties, no injuries. The elevator rescue operations were completed while you were working on the device networks. And Maria Santos? The student whose cousin discovered this operation. She's been asking about you. Wants to know if her electronics instructor is really the person who saved downtown Phoenix. Vanessa smiled for the first time since the operation began. Tell her that her electronics instructor is still planning to be in class tomorrow morning. Assuming Henderson Technical College doesn't mind having the most overqualified community college instructor in American history. Agent Chun raised an eyebrow. You're planning to return to teaching? I discovered something important today. I'm not just an EOD specialist or a counterterrorism expert or a federal consultant. I'm an educator who happens to have specialized technical skills. Commander Blake looked puzzled. Ms. Martinez, you could have any position you want in the federal government. Why would you choose to remain at a community college? Because my students need to learn that technical knowledge comes with responsibility. They need to understand that engineering skills can be used to build better futures, or to destroy what others have created. Vanessa looked toward the Westgate Financial Center, where emergency lighting was being replaced with normal building illumination as the structure returned to operational status. They need to learn that sometimes the most important battles are fought not by soldiers or federal agents, but by teachers who understand that knowledge is only valuable when it's used to protect people. As the federal agencies began their long process of investigation and analysis, Vanessa collected her personal equipment and prepared to return to her normal life as a community college instructor. But she knew that her life would never be quite normal again. The engineering department at Henderson Technical College was about to acquire a faculty member whose expertise in explosive ordnance disposal had just prevented a national catastrophe. Her students were about to discover that their quiet electronics instructor possessed knowledge and skills that had made her the most effective counterterrorism specialist in American history. Most importantly, Vanessa had learned that some responsibilities couldn't be escaped, and some skills came with obligations that transcended personal preferences. She would return to teaching circuit design and basic electronics, but she would also be ready if her specialized knowledge was needed again. Dr. Patterson would probably never again refer to her work as hobby electronics for the community college crowd. After all, she'd just proven that community college instructors could be far more dangerous to the right targets than anyone had ever imagined. 3 seconds. That's how close downtown Phoenix had come to catastrophic destruction. 3 seconds had been enough time for a community college instructor to save thousands of lives and defeat one of the world's most sophisticated terrorists. Sometimes 3 seconds was all you needed if you knew exactly what to do with them. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.